Hello 8E. Today is October 29th, 2014, and this is the first video I've made for you guys for math. So what I'm going to do is walk through how to do a bunch of problems here. I'm going to show it on the screen. You can follow along if you like. Try to anticipate the answer. That's the best way to learn from these videos. And this video is just here as a reminder in case you kind of halfway through the unit forget kind of how to convert a fraction to a decimal, fraction to a percent, that kind of thing. Alright? So it'll get you to follow along. Here we go. First thing we're going to talk about is how to convert a fraction to a decimal. This is actually something that you learned in grade 7, so this is just review. Alright? The easiest way to do this is to actually just divide the top number by the bottom number of the fraction. That will work for you every single time, and you can use your calculator for that. So to do that, we're just going to go 5 divided by 8, so top divided by bottom, and if I put that in my calculator, what I get is, faster Mr. Berry, 0.625. So as a decimal, 5 over 8 is 0.625. Nice and easy, just divide the top by the bottom. Now we're going to convert a fraction to a percent, which is a little bit harder, but only because it has an extra step. And that extra step isn't even that complicated, so that's really nice. There's two ways to do this depending on what kind of fraction you get. So I'm going to show you, actually I've done this poorly, I'll show you the easier way first. So let's do 4 out of 25. Okay? If I want to make 4/25 into a percent, the easiest way for me to do that is by looking at my denominator. The denominator here is 25. You should know that 25 multiplies very easily into 100. Okay? So this actually just becomes a proportion problem for us. So I'm going to set up my proportion. Alright? So I'm going to set up my new proportion to be out of 100 because a percent is always a fraction out of 100. Alright? So, and I just don't know what my missing value is there. All I'm going to do is figure out what I multiply 25 by to get to 100. 25 goes into 100 how many times? 4 times. Perfect. So 25 times 4 is 100, which means I also have to multiply 4 times 4 to figure out what n is. 4 times 4 is 16. So n is 16. Okay? And so my percentage then, my final answer, is 16%. Right? So this works really nicely if, and only if, the denominator here is easily multiplied to 100. So if it's, 2, 10, 25, 50, 20 even, depending on how well you know your times tables. If you can easily multiply to 100, you can do it this way. It's really fast. The other way to do it that takes 2 steps, we'll go back to my 11 out of 13 here. The first thing that we have to do is actually convert the fraction to a decimal, just like we did here. So I'm going to go 11 divided by 13. Right? So 11 divided by 13, again, numerator divided by denominator. And when I put that in my calculator, what I get is 0.85. I'm just going to round. So 0.85. Okay, so as a decimal, it's 0.85. Now, what I hope you guys realize is to convert a decimal to a percent, you just need to multiply that decimal by 100. So to get my percent, I'm going to go switch to my pen, 0.85 times 100. And my answer is 85%. Okay? So this one you can do if your denominator does not easily multiply to 100. You just divide the top by the bottom, multiply by 100. Whenever you get a mark on a test, this is how you can figure out your percentage. You divide the number of answers you got right by the total number of answers, and then multiply it by 100. Alright? Moving on. Alright, we're going to look at how we convert a decimal to a percent. We've already looked at this a little bit in the last slide. It's incredibly easy. These are the easiest ones to remember. So to go from a decimal to a percent, you actually just multiply your decimal by 100. Easy way to remember is that when you multiply by 100 is that there's 2 zeros in 100, and so because of that you have to move the decimal to the right 2 times when you multiply. So my answer is 41%. Okay? The reason this works is that a percentage is some number out of 100, and a decimal is some number over 1. So to go from 1 to 100, I multiply by 100. So I always multiply this by 100 as well. That's just why that works. Okay? Converting a decimal to a fraction is a little bit harder, and you just need to remember your numbers places. All right? What you have to do is look at your decimal and look at what place the last number of your decimal is in. So if you remember your decimal places, this number's in the ones place, this is in the tenths, this is in the hundredths, okay? And the key there is that this number, the last one, is in the hundredths. Just going to quickly write that down, hundredths, okay? What that means is, all I have to do now is take the number that falls after the decimal place and write it over 100. Okay, so my answer should be 52 over 100. Now that's not in lowest terms, so I know I can divide both of these by 2 because they're even numbers. That's going to get me 26 over 50. I can still divide those by 2, which gets me 13 out of 25. Alright? The key here again is just to look at what place this falls in and then write the whole number over this number. Okay? I'll give you one more example because I know that's a little bit confusing. Let me just erase this top part here. Alright? I'm just going to erase the whole top. Erase. Sorry, I'm getting used to this program again. Alright, let's pick another number here. So if I have 0.7 and I want to figure out what that is as a fraction, you see here that 0.7 ends in the tenths place. Oh my goodness, sorry guys, in the tenths place. Alright, and because it ends in the tenths place, all I'm going to do is take that 7 and write it over 10. So this number here is what you write as your denominator. This number here is what you put as your numerator. Down here, I'm just going to write out the decimal again, 0.52. This is my denominator. This becomes my numerator. And you should always put fractions in lowest terms. Always, always, always. Last bit here. Alright, we're going to convert a percent to a decimal. Remember, to go from a decimal to a percent, I multiply by 100. So to go from a percent to a decimal, I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm just going to...
Moody, can you please come to room 214? Hannah Moody, 214.
I hate when I get interrupted by announcements while I'm making videos. Anyway, I'm going to divide 98 by 100. Okay? And what I end up getting is 0.98. So all I really did there was move the decimal place, which is technically right there, and move it 2 spots to the left this time. Okay? You're always just moving the decimal. You got to remember that your percent should always be bigger than your decimal. So if you accidentally multiply your percent by 100 instead of divide, you're going to get a huge decimal, and you know that can't be right. All right? Last one, and it's actually much easier for converting a percent to a fraction than it is to convert a decimal to a fraction. Remember I said earlier that all percents are some number out of 100. Okay, so in this case, it's 44 out of 100. So we're just going to write it that way instead of as a percent. And then last step, as always, is we're going to put this into lowest terms. So I'm going to get 22, I can divide them both by 2, which gets me 22 out of 50. I'm going to divide those both by 2, which gets me 11 over 25. Alright, this has all been a review of grade 7 math. This is nothing new. I just want to make sure you guys have this video as a reference in case you need it. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for watching.